Thanks everybody for coming. This is really an amazing event. I'm Bart Hamilton, as Dean Taylor said. I'm the inaugural director of the Koch Center for Family Business. It's really an honor to hold that title. This is a really important asset, as Mark said, for not only Olin, but also for St. Louis and our more global community that we're trying to serve. And as said, I once again want to thank the Koch family for really having the vision and the will and the commitment to kind of put this on the agenda and put this out there for our faculty, students, and alumni, and the community in St. Louis and abroad. So let's thank them again. Also, I want to, the other person there, I think we really need to thank, because he has been the energy, the push behind really supporting family business and putting it on the agenda for the whole school, and that's Spencer Burke, who's our executive in residence, and really, I think it's a testament to all your hard work to have such a wonderful event. So what I'm going to do, I just want to spend a few minutes talking to you about what we're doing at the Koch Center, how we want to engage you. I think fundamentally what we're trying to do is take our family here, the family at Olin and Washington University, faculty, students, alumni, staff, and so forth, and try and help your family businesses solve their problems or solve issues that they have, and so that your businesses will be sustainable over the long term and grow and be successful. And I think, as we said, we know that something like 2/3 of employment in cities like St. Louis relate to family business or have some connection to family and private business. So this is something that's natural for a business school like Olin to do. And we're really excited about kind of pushing more directly into the space through the Koch Center. When I took over as a director now almost a year ago, I made an effort and wanted to reach out to a lot of you, a lot of family business owners, not only here in St. Louis, but also from elsewhere in the United States and also abroad, and just get some idea of the challenges that you're facing so that we can have some idea of what the Koch Center can do to address those. And I think what I came out with is a variety of different things. There are a variety of different challenges that people raised, but really there were kind of three that stood out to me. The first, I think, is pretty, not surprising. I hear lots of stories about how do we align family and business needs. This can relate to things about how do we have succession, who succeeds going from Gen 1 to Gen 2, and we see a lot of failures when businesses go from Gen 1 to Gen 2 or Gen 3 and so forth. And the second thing is also, I heard a lot about families as owners versus managers. So what are the conflicts often that you have when you have a family member who has different interests, maybe as an owner of the business but not a manager, and vice versa? Maybe you have a manager. How do you manage that conflict? We're going to hear about some businesses today that have very successfully, I think, managed that. But this is something that we want to study more and also kind of provide support in addressing and helping people solve these sorts of problems. That's kind of what I expected to hear. I think what I was surprised about, and I shouldn't have necessarily been that surprised, is a lot of talk about how to navigate kind of the current economic and policy environment. So where there's a lot of uncertainty about policies like tariffs and other sorts of things that really have been of great concern to many family business owners. And one thing, though, that was interesting to me in talking with these family business owners was they have something that they can rely on that a lot of other businesses don't, which is their family history of running that business. And so I was talking to one person who was telling me, they were talking about how do we respond to tariffs, how do we, we manufacture in China and we export, what can we do? And then he stopped and he said, my dad was telling me about how we responded when we had the oil crisis back in '79, and I talked to him about what was the response, what actions did we take in the business that could help us survive that, and I think that what I call family human capital is a very important strategic asset, and I think we're going to hear more about that today. It's also, the other thing that came out of this very clearly is that one thing family business owners want to do is you want to learn from each other. And what that's going to lead us to say or to do in the Koch Center is provide a forum for family business owners, not only to learn from faculty and so forth, but also, more importantly, I think, to learn from your peers and see how they solve problems that you're facing. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing that came up was talent acquisition. So how do we attract and retain talent in family businesses? We're at Olin, we're in the talent business. We attract top talent from all around the world to come here. And how do we give family business owners access to that talent? When you talk to students, they often say, well, I want to work for Google or Facebook or something like that. But I think what they miss and what we're also trying to work with them to see is that family business often provides them with much greater opportunity and responsibilities and different activities that they can take as a manager in a business like that as opposed to maybe a larger company. And so one of the things I'll talk about is what we're going to try and do to connect family businesses with the talent that we have here at Olin. So what are we doing? There's kind of three pillars: research, teaching, and community engagement. In terms of research, we're developing a faculty network of professors at other top universities like Johns Hopkins, University of North Carolina, University of Wisconsin, to address particular issues that of interest. Right now, the kind of focus has been on the relationship between family and finance in developing and growing family businesses. So that's a project we're working on, as well as the center is providing support for doctoral students. We have one of our doctoral students here today who's studying family networks in Korea and how that impacts economic growth. And we're also going to be providing undergraduate research opportunities, particularly in looking at perhaps issues that are more local to communities like St. Louis and how family businesses impact that. So that's on the research side. On the teaching side, of course, we have Spencer's very popular family business course that many of you have spoken in. And then the other thing we do, one of our pillars at Olin, is experiential learning. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the experiential learning opportunities that we're providing students that family businesses can also engage in. And then I'll say a little bit about community engagement. So the ways that we do experiential learning with family businesses at Olin, the first is what we call a practicum project. That's a traditional consulting project that a family business can have a group of students work on a pretty well-defined business problem, like a marketing plan or something like that, under the guidance of a faculty advisor. This is something we've done successfully for a number of years with the Center for Experiential Learning, and we did a project in the fall for the Tugboat Group, and we've done projects in the past for other family businesses. So that's one way you can engage with us and one way that the center is supporting family business. The second is something that I think is quite important, and that is the Small Business Initiative. So this is a program that is designed to support small businesses in lower income communities, starting with Ferguson and now moving also to North St. Louis. We're doing this in partnership with St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. And this is really designed for undergraduate students who can get their hands around the business needs of these businesses, the restaurants, barbershops, other sorts of businesses like that, that really often are a very key part of their low-income community. And so what we're hoping to do with this program is basically help those businesses succeed. And we've had, I put up, one of our clients has been Spencer's Bakery. I don't think maybe that's Spencer's. London's Wing House, which is I think a third generation family business that has wings up in North St. Louis, very, very delicious. So again, this is something we're trying to not just serve a variety of different constituencies in their family business needs. And then finally, I think one of the really unusual and new programs we're doing is the Koch Family Business Fellows. And what this really is trying to do is embed a student in a family business. What we're trying to do is to teach students, maybe you're a G2 or G3, a student whose family has a family business, how do you learn how to get involved in that business? Well, one of the things perhaps we can do is let that student see a different business here. The other thing we might do is for a student who may have some interest in working in a family business, this also gives them an opportunity to have a deep dive in with a particular business. The idea here is that student would be an intern, work with top managers, top management owners of the firm, and on a particular problem or maybe developing a case study. I think this is a really exciting opportunity to expose students to family business and also give them the opportunity to think about, is this the right career path for me if I'm not a family business manager? We're a family business from a family business. We're going to be asking you, I think, for help. If you're interested in participating in this, we'd love to have you involved. And we're starting that in the fall. And then the last couple things I'll talk about is the attendance, just the enthusiasm for everything that we're doing here with the symposium and so forth. It just seems silly not to only do this once a year. So we want to do this on a smaller scale more often, and what we're starting is a quarterly family breakfast series hosted by Mike Kohler, who's, you may all know Mike, who's the former retired CEO of HBM Holdings. What he's going to do is he's going to be moderating usually panels on different topics related to family business. And the goals of this are to give you insights on issues like succession and governance and so forth, and also to give you the chance to engage in peer networking and so forth. And so we'd love to invite you to our first family business breakfast, which will be on March 10th, starting at 7:30 over in the Knight Center. Okay. And then the last thing that we're doing, or the second important step we're taking in community engagement is we'll be starting executive education classes aimed at family business owners and managers. These will be faculty-led training, kind of a one-day thing where there's some case studies, live case studies to work on, and then kind of peer working groups so you can work on the particular issues that are the topic of that session. I'm really excited to announce that the lead faculty member for developing this series of educational, non-degree education is Jackson Nickerson. Some of you may have had a class from him or know him. He used to run our Brookings Executive Education for us, and he's very excited to get going and talk about, kind of start rolling out our exec ed offerings, and that'll be starting in the fall. So that's what we're doing. One other thing I want to announce is, as of October, we hired Alex Hyman as our Associate Director for the Koch Center. His responsibilities are primarily in community engagement. So a lot of you will meet him. You should meet him, talk to me. He can tell you more about how to get involved in the Koch Center. When I hired Alex, he's an Olin MBA, former student of mine. He's very, very enthusiastic about the Koch Center. And I said, I want you to go out and meet some of the top family businesses around the world. So this is the first family business that he met. So I told him that in October, and somehow we got a meeting with the Queen of England a month later. She was particularly excited about the Koch Center. Now that's what a 30th generation family business, so it makes 300 years, talk about, 800 years or whatever. She has some succession issues. Maybe some of her grandchildren aren't so interested in being involved in the family business anymore. And, maybe we can have some programming around setting up family meetings that are productive, who gets to call into the meeting and so forth. So I'm really excited to have Alex on board. And I would ask you that if you're interested and we are inviting you to engage with us, we'd love to have you get involved with our faculty, our students, and just be sure you can reach me anytime. I'd love to talk to you and reach Alex anytime. We'd love to meet with you, talk to you, and have you tell us how we can help you. It's great. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to the rest of the program.
Well, thank you, Bart. It's a real pleasure to hear that. We've been talking about the Koch Center for a number of years, and here it is, and it's happening, and that's a wonderful thing. So thank you. That was a fabulous presentation. So now we'll get started. My job as Master of Ceremonies is to keep this on track, so I'm pleased to say that we're slightly ahead, so let's stay that way. The first presentation will be an hour. At the 10-minute mark, unless the moderator wants to do it sooner, we'll open it up for questions. When they ask for questions, what I'd appreciate is something other than stunned silence and like staring at us. You have 50 minutes to come up with a question. A few of you I know can do that, so I'm counting on you. I want Olin to look good in front of these fabulous people that we've brought to St. Louis. So first up, I want to introduce David Kohler. The way we're going to do this is David's going to talk for a few minutes, tell about his incredible company, and he will be joined on the podium by his moderator, which is Peter Baumgarten. Peter is the professor of practice, strategy, and organizations here at Olin. And I must say, he is just a fabulous representative of the Olin faculty. I couldn't be more thankful to have him involved in this. And I think I mentioned before, he's the one that came up with this great topic today. So David Kohler, CEO of Kohler Company in Kohler, Wisconsin for the last 5 years. Been with the company, I think I've got it right, is it 29 years? 29 years, which he seems like he must have joined when he was 2. But this is a fourth generation business, employees, I've seen 30,000, 35,000, global business, 246th largest family business in the world as ranked by University St. Gallen in Switzerland, and the 60th largest private enterprise in the United States. So with no further ado, let's have the program start, and I want to introduce you to David Kohler. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Spencer, and good morning, everyone. I want to tell you what an honor it is to be here. I want to thank the Olin School. I want to thank Jim Turley, our board member, for the encouragement. But you have an amazing business community here in St. Louis, and it's been wonderful last night and today to meet many of the faces behind the businesses and brands that I know and meet new people. So thank you for the invitation. I hope it's the first of many. I'm going to have the lights dimmed, and we're going to play a short video, and somebody's going to give me the slide advancer that was stolen. Okay, thank you. All right, but let's dim the lights and play a little short video to give you a flavor of our company.
Our world. We love it openly. We love it boldly. It's rich with history. And what lies ahead is filled with brilliant promise. It's our unique way of looking at things, with both distinct perspective and gracious manner. It's living by our credo that our design-forward thinking should have impact, not just aesthetically, but environmentally. That power is intense and essential to our basic needs. That hospitality is a shareable form of art, and that the space we live in is vital because it's also the space we love in. That everything we see, touch, taste is inspired by art and the artists who live beyond conventional limits. Our world. We are its curators, its bold pioneers, its most passionate caretakers. That it's our people and our products that ultimately result in our pride and our purpose.
So I'm just going to give you a short overview of our company. Our company is 146 years old, and I think like many of the businesses in the room today, we were built in a similar manner. Our company is about resilience. We've been through 18 recessions, 2 depressions, and the most recent global financial crisis. We have no debt as a company. We're in a very strong financial position and strategic position. But at the heart of what we are, and I'll tell you about that, is this entrepreneurial spirit and tenacity that has built the company. It fuels our energy. It fuels our culture today to pioneer new markets. And we think these are the qualities that are going to take us well into the future. This was the gentleman that started our company. He was an immigrant from Austria. He came here with his family, a family of 15 eventually. He was the only one. He grew up on a farm in Minnesota. He was the only one of the family of 15 that didn't become a farmer. He traveled to Chicago. He went to university, became a traveling salesman covering the country north of Chicago into Wisconsin. There wasn't much there at the time. But he, at the end of his route, he fell in love with a young lady. Her father owned a cast iron foundry, and he was able to acquire into that cast iron foundry, eventually own it. And we started making plows, farm equipment, ornamental crosses, everything out of cast iron. But there was a financial panic in the United States at that time in 1873 and the following decade. 68 railroads went out of business that year, so he had to be inventive. He had to find things to make. And he took a horse trough hog scalder, he enameled it, furnished it with 4 feet, and created our first bathtub in 1883. He sold that bathtub for 1 cow and 14 chickens. To this day, I wish we could get 1 cow and 14 chickens for a bathtub. But it's this idea about being innovative, and we all face those experiences where we have to find creative solutions. In our company's history, we've actually had 7 leaders. There was 1 non-family for a period of time. But you can see the 6 family members and some very long tenures from a number of those family members that all made incredible contributions throughout our history, including my father, who's still passionate and driven as our executive chairman with over 50 years in our company. I tell people that ask about him, I know he's doing well because he wants my job every day. Our company is about $7 billion in size. We now have locations around the world and over 30 brands that have been built organically or acquired. We have a footprint that stems from North America to Europe, and then our fastest growing region has been in Asia over the last 25 years, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We were lucky to be recognized by Fast Company as one of the American companies, brands that really gets design. You know, design is core to who we are, and to be recognized up there with these great brands as a company that stands for design was a very proud moment for us. We were also recognized by Fortune because of our role as a private company, but in the home and the importance to the home environment over our history. When you look at our measure of book value appreciation, we measure that against the S&P 500. So over the last 50 years, we've improved our book value on a compound average basis of 9.8%. This is our sales track. You can see we were at the epicenter of the Great Recession that hit the housing market. It was the worst decline in the housing market in 2009 since the Great Depression, but since then we've regrown and driven. Our global diversification and business diversification was one of the pieces that helped us through that. Our largest business in the original core business is the kitchen and bath business. And we do have a store, a Kohler store in Ladue for all of those that are interested in this. So that's my sales pitch. But it's an interesting business. We're number 1 here in the United States. We're the number 1 brand in China. We have 1,000 Kohler stores in China. We've been there for 24 years, and now we're the number 1 international brand in India, with our sights set on being the number 1 overall brand over time. We're present in most other major markets around the world, but we really want to lead in these largest eventual economies in the world. Intelligent products, smart products, a big trend in our business. If you've never had or experienced an intelligent toilet, please experience one. It will be a transformative experience in your life. This one plays music, heated seat, auto open, auto close. My wife came out of the bathroom the other day and she said, and this was unprompted, I love our intelligent toilet. I can't believe anybody could live without one. And I was like, we need to record that. And then connected products. So we were just at CES. We've been at CES, Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas for 3 years. First launched the connected bathroom in that environment. We continue to bring new products to that space. Online, e-commerce, huge channel growth, not only here, but also in China and key markets around the world, a major trend in our business. We also have a portfolio of acquired luxury brands. Some of them you might be familiar with: Ann Sachs, Tile & Stone, Callista, which is a luxury plumbing brand, Roburn mirrored cabinets. And we just launched Kohler Lighting, a new foray into decorative lighting into our business. Our second largest group is Power. Our power business is 100 years old. We have one of our engine distributors in the room, Mike Meadard, and John Costello was there last night in Power Systems. But we make gasoline and diesel engines below 100 horsepower, as well as generators, industrial generators, residential generators. So this is a residential generator. You can see those generators on top are doing standby power for a large data center. And then you can see marine generators. And you might say, well, how did you get into this business? We had an inventive engineer in 1920 by the name of Anton Bratz, and he saw the need for power in rural America, created our first internal combustion engine, eventually a generator, and that got us into the power business, and we've since expanded and grown. And then the business that I think people know us pretty well for now is our hospitality business. This was all started when my father took this old, beautiful building that was called the American Club. It was a dormitory for immigrant workers. They could learn English, study to gain their citizenship in the early 1900s. But he had to do something with this, so he converted it to a five-star hotel in 1981. The board thought he was crazy. He had to go to the board 3 times to get approval, but finally got approval. And then the rest ensued. This is our new hotel in Green Bay, Wisconsin, across from Lambeau Field. This is the Old Course Hotel in St. Andrews, Scotland, that we acquired. And we're really pleased to see what the growth of our golf business has been. We opened our first golf course in 1988, and we've hosted 6 major championships now on the 4 golf courses in Kohler, and very honored to host the Ryder Cup in 2020 this year in September. You're all welcome. We do have some corporate chalets available, so I can also help you with that later. But it's a great story. If you build it, they will come. Nobody would have ever thought that Wisconsin could have been a golf destination. And I credit my father and Pete Dye for building beautiful experiential golf courses and creating a golf destination. I think my father's favorite business right now is this, Kohler Original Recipes chocolates and brandy. He seems to like the tasting sessions more than anything. All these businesses are brought together by our mission. Our mission is to enhance the level of gracious living for all those people touched by our products and services. And before it was in vogue, these attributes have really defined what we stand for in terms of charm, good taste, generosity of spirit, self-fulfillment, and enhancement of nature. And then if you look at our guiding principles, they really are the DNA of the strategy that drives all of our businesses. And it begins with the first one, live on the leading edge of design and technology and product and process. We very much are design driven and focused as a company. Second, maintaining a single level of quality across all product and service categories. And then third, providing consistent, quick delivery to the end user, maintaining a strong organization of passionate people, and then reinvesting. We reinvest over 90% of our earnings back into the business every year. Our dividend payout ratio is about 8.5%. And that's one of the key elements to why we've been successful, that financial discipline over time. I just want to touch on the arts, sustainability, and stewardship, very important things to us. This was a great quote that Walter Kohler found in the 1920s. Life without labor is guilt. Labor without art is brutality. And it sums up our culture, our ethos, the importance of work ethic, as well as the importance of design in the arts. This is a program that was started by my father and my aunt in the early 1970s. It's called Arts and Industry, where we bring artists into our factories to create art that they can then later sell or exhibit. And it's really gotten so many artists off the ground, as well as help them establish themselves more and give them the opportunity to work in these incredible industrial settings to create art. We've had over 500 artists through our facilities, and now we're extending this internationally as well. From a sustainability standpoint, we've always focused on being a good environmental steward, but in 2007-08, we said we really have to do more. How do we lead as a company and show people that environmentalism and capitalism can work together? In fact, that's how we have to drive the future and pioneer it. We made a commitment to reduce our environmental footprint at that time 3% per annum, and you can see some of our results. But we also said, you know, a sustainability strategy is not just about doing less bad, it's about doing good, and how can we drive more environmentally friendly products in our business. And these products, whether they're lower emission engines or whether they're water conserving products, these products have driven significant growth over that time in our business. And then finally, how do we teach other companies and consumers how they can act and behave to also drive sustainability as a country? And you can see our goal on the top right. It's great to see all the other companies coming out and driving after this. But in 2008, we set this pretty aggressive goal to be net zero with offsets by 2035. And this is one of the neat outgrowths of this strategy has been the Waste Lab. So we have a group of creative engineers and designers working to make beautiful products out of waste. So you can see some of the tile in the middle that come from the Waste Lab. Another neat program is called Innovation for Good, and this is about how do we use our talents to solve some of the world's toughest problems. You can see this is a product we launched called Clarity, which is a very accessible, low-cost, very effective water filtration system for parts of the world that don't have access to safe drinking water. This product was done with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, an effort to try to commercialize a closed-loop sanitation system for those parts of the world that don't have any structured sanitation or sewer systems. And then the gentleman on the left is from our UK team, and he is working on a hand washing station for parts of the world that don't have simple hygiene available to them. So that's all I have for my prepared remarks, and Peter's going to come out here and give me a lot of tough questions, and then we're going to set it up to the questions that Spencer's asked you to prepare. So thank you.
So I had a series of prepared questions, and then I heard about intelligent toilets, and everything's
Got it. You lost
changed.
your focus.
So let me give you a sense on what I want to do today and to tee this up for you all as well. In a lot of ways, we design our strategies. We think of ideas that we hear across a variety of different conversations and presentations, and it might allow you to go back to your own family, to your own companies, and to say, can we try that? Can we test it out? And so one of the benefits of being able to sit with you, David, is to be able to dig in to some of what has worked in terms of both strategy and tactics on the company side as well as on the family side. And so we're going to use that as our impetus to kind of mine the lessons of some of your leadership as well as some of the family's leadership over time. So I want to start out with this broader question, which is around the benefits of being private. So when you think of the benefits for Kohler of your particular move towards being a private company, let alone family, which we'll get into in a bit, how do you think of that as being able to shape some of the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So I think we would, we're great proponents of the advantages of being private. Number one, we would say the long-term thinking and orientation that allows us. Second, I would say the ability to take risks that other companies won't take, educated risks. And third is this ability to focus from a time standpoint versus having to worry about preparing for the street. What's the street going to say about this move or that move? I would also say privacy of competitive information. And then finally, continuity of leadership, which bridges into the family. But being private, you're not changing your CEO every 3 to 5 years. And shifting strategy as a company. And if you think about, back to the risk taking for our company, we went into China 24 years ago. We lost money for probably the first 6-7 years. Now it's one of our most profitable. It's our second largest region in the world, highly profitable, fast growing. We went into India 14 years ago. We're managing India, frankly, to be a break-even business today by choice this long in, because we want to build a leadership position there, so we're investing. We're not undercutting the price, we're just investing in brand building and expansion of distribution. These types of long-term decisions a public company may not make. And so it's situations like that where I think there is a decisive difference.
So one piece of this is then the ability to remove some of the potential constraints of the public markets. But you also have to have the vision, the inventiveness, the creativity on the part of the leadership team. How do you think about building that culture of innovation and creativity inside the company itself?
Yeah, it's an endless job. I think that is probably one of the things we think about the most. Because at the end of the day, this company is about much more than me or my family. It's about how do we, build this as a perpetuating, sustainable organization that can continue to drive forward and succeed for the next 146 years. So we spend a lot of time, and that's where, we may not enunciate a lot about, family-led, family-driven, because we want all of our people to have that passion and ownership and drive. So I think, it's that sense of humility maybe also, but it's about fostering that passion. And I think, why have we succeeded in China? We exported the culture to China. Why have we succeeded in India? We exported the culture to India and built strong local teams. We certainly had a few expats when we started, but we need local teams that understand these markets and can drive the business, but they possess incredible entrepreneurial spirit and drive that are, adapting the strategy for the market in products and go-to-market strategy and everything. That's the only way that we've succeeded, because they've embraced and bought into the culture and are taking Kohler to levels we've never imagined. And we couldn't have done that centrally quarterbacking from Wisconsin.
So we're going to talk about family here in a second, but let's go to this idea of exporting culture. You hear this quite a bit, the importance of essentially taking what was unique to what this company is doing and taking it to a different office, whether that's around the state or the states or even nationally. What are some of the particular tactics that you do on the ground to export well? What's the Kohler's unique approach to exporting?
Well, I wish I could say we're perfect at it. No company with the span, can be perfect. I mean, we have plants right now that are struggling in different parts of the world because we don't have necessarily the right leadership and culture and team in place. I think that the first point, though, it starts with talent selection. I mean, you have got, it's people first, strategy second. You have got to really focus on the right people on the team. And so we spend a lot of time in talent assessment using outside instruments, using interviews, using references, and trying to make good talent selections in building that team. The gentleman who's leading our kitchen and bath group today, he started as a controller. He's getting close to 25 years at Kohler. He started as a controller in the early 90s, or mid-90s. He started as a controller in one of our plants in China. And he rose to be the director of finance. He rose to be the president of China. He rose to, So that's a story of succession. Many of our leaders in that business and in our India business started with Kohler, even in high turnover markets, and we've been able to keep them and grow them. So that focus on talent selection, growing that talent, and then immersing them in the values of the company and not just talking about it, but how do we live and how do we think and how do we work? That's how the values get communicated.
And is that then a piece of this idea of emphasizing the family component a bit less? If you are hiring me, you want me to feel like I can be a part of this organization without being a member of the Kohler family?
100%. I mean, I think, if you talk to our team in China or India or anywhere in the world, I mean, they feel, or in the States, I mean, they feel like they own it. And that's one of our key cultural beliefs, is owning it. And we want people to own it and represent it. And because everybody needs the passion and energy and drive of the owner. That's the X factor. There's nothing, though, that can equal when I go to India or China or one of our family and you meet, or in the States and you meet with customers. That's an X factor that's very, very strong and really unique to family involvement in a business that families should leverage. We all know what that power is like when you can shake a hand of a key customer, a prospect, or an architect, designer, developer. It makes a huge difference. So I spend a lot of time traversing the world doing that.
Well, we're going to shift to talk about families in particular right here. And I will say there's nothing more intimidating than waking up and washing your face in the morning and seeing right in front of you the actual family name of someone who you're talking to.
Or doing something else in the morning, right?
That's true.
But it's great to
Once
make
I go
a product.
intelligent on my toilet, that's right.
It's great to make a product that people have to use every day.
Yeah.
You have
Lord
no
willing,
choice.
right? Yeah. So let's talk about family as a subset of private. So there's quite a bit of talk around how family can be a strategic advantage. In fact, we had some conversations last night with a few folks over dinner about the benefit of trust and connection amongst family members to the actual business itself. At the same point, family can be a strategic liability at times. Maybe some of the conversations are more heated and more personal than it might be if it's just business.
Yeah.
So given these two components, what do you do as a leader and at Kohler more broadly to ensure more of the strategic benefit versus liability?
Yeah, it's always a balance, and there's always dangers lurking at every turn. And the key to sustain family businesses is keeping the family healthy, because as soon as the family relationships go south, the business will blow up. You can work on a beautiful business, but if the family isn't healthy, you'll blow up the business. So that's a chapter we should discuss about how do you keep the family relationships strong. But to your exact point, I think there are a lot of dangers that you have to avoid. And we've always focused on putting the company first and talking about that. Jim Collins talks about level 5 leaders having humility and will. If you're going to be an individual that can manage family relationships and drive business success, you have to manage egos, personalities, a variety of things, and move the enterprise forward, right? Once in a while, you'll have, like my father, huge, bigger than life, charismatic leader. And he's an amazing leader, and that's his style, and he's very good at it. I'm a little different in my style, but I have to drive the continuity of the enterprise forward during his lifetime and then after his lifetime in my own way. If I was big ego, I would be gone long ago. No, that's the reality. That couldn't coexist. Likewise, other family members putting self-interest ahead of the enterprise. At the end of the day, it's about the enterprise, what's best for the enterprise, whether that means I have to leave or others, or we have to play different roles. It's about the success of the enterprise. And then second, it's about making tough decisions. No company can succeed over time without making tough decisions. People decisions, business decisions, and the company can never lose that will to make tough decisions.
So I want to talk about some of the relationship dynamics in place at a family. Again, I was struck, as you've talked about it before, it's one thing to think about family in an abstract sense, and then you talk about older sisters. And for me, it
I got two of them.
Starts to feel more real. So
Yeah.
2 older sisters,
Yeah.
the 3 of you together as a unit. What have been some of the practices that you've had to build amongst this group of 3 to make sure that that unit in particular is healthy for the business?
Yeah. So about 15, 16 years ago, we didn't have a high degree of trust. We were all kind of in the business, different levels, and really didn't fully trust each other. And so we took the initiative actually to get an outside consultant to work with us. And we just worked on our relationship and talking about what we thought about the future of the business. And we discussed this idea of living a life of purpose versus privilege and putting the enterprise first. And that helped significantly. And we actually went to my father with the succession plan and saying, we've agreed that we think David is the best to be CEO. We're going to play these different roles. And that helped kick off 15 years of succession moves. And I think it took a load off my father's back because he didn't really know how he was going to handle these different personalities and interests. But it never stops. Right now we're in the chapter because we did a recapitalization in 1998 where we shrunk the ownership back. So even though we're 146 years old, 4th generation, we're kind of more like a second generation business because the ownership is very concentrated with my father, my 2 siblings, and myself. And we put the voting shares in a stewardship trust, a generation skipping trust. So only family members above a certain level in the company can vote that trust going forward. So it's very concentrated. So that's different than the dynamic of other companies that are as old as we are. But what we have to work on now is not only our current relationship, we're now in the process of bringing in the spouses. Historically, the spouses have not been core in the family dynamic in our company. But as we started thinking about, we have to bring in the next generation, Gen 5 and then Gen 6. Gen 5 has 10 children in it. For us to properly do that and communicate the right values and communicate the importance of ownership, values, and to this next generation, we need spouses integrated in that. So we're now integrating the spouses into this higher trust, very intimate relationship, and then we'll be integrating Gen 5 and eventually Gen 6.
So let's dig into that because this is interesting to me. I'm the son of a social worker, so we spend a lot of time talking about family dynamics around the table. And I'm a business
do too.
Professor.
I'm in it.
So how do those meetings look different with the spouses included?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is. I mean, this is the reality of family businesses. I mean, that's the reality we all know. I mean, it's different. But if you think about it, because there's a dynamic, spousal interference. Well, is it really spousal interference? Because they're kind of equal partners when we think about raising this family and having the values we want. So you get into things like that, and it's just a new and different feeling when you're first doing it. But if you think about the wealth of contribution and synergy that you can have with those people and the alignment, because families to really accelerate and succeed, you need alignment. I need alignment with my father. We need alignment as a key ownership group or a broader family organization to really drive the purpose, drive the value, make decisions as a company. So it's not easy, but the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is big if you can figure it out. And we talked last night, and Jeff talked a little bit about the criticality in their history of bringing spouses in and how that fortified the organization. We have amazing spouses. My wife's an incredible thought leader about Kohler and Toomey and Koch. My brother-in-law is the CEO of Hyatt Hotels. He's a very capable leader. My other brother-in-law runs a consulting business in experiential education. Very strong, accomplished individual. So we need to access those talents. The same way when we look at future generations, how do we access the talents and treat people equally so we don't create divisiveness? Again, if you want to keep the family strong, you can't create divisiveness. Everybody's equal, but some are more equal than others. That doesn't work.
What about this idea of, was it purpose over privilege?
Yeah.
Again, that's something that sounds really nice. It resonates really well. But translating that into a set of ways that you think about raising your children, dealing with the family, I'm curious how you make that translation.
No, 100%. And all of us as parents, it's never easy, particularly when our lives are different than, we have more wealth than perhaps the way we grew up. And how do you, it's about instilling the right values. My parents taught me about the importance of work ethic. My mother taught us about equality. Nobody's better than anyone else. My mother always used to say, you can tell a lot about a woman by how she treats the elevator operator, because it was just her way of saying in her time that being gracious to everyone is important. And it's those values of work ethic, equality, and then respect for the company, things like that, that we try to perpetuate, and not giving kids too much too early. We really think that's not good. And our
when you
kids,
say we, you mean even
my
this
family.
collective
Yeah,
family.
we're not. We don't believe in trust fund babies. And it's not perfect. I mean, our kids are going to have wealth, but how do we measure that out? And that's how we've structured the stewardship trust at age intervals. But more importantly, how do you build a foundation? Go pursue whatever you want. You don't have to pursue something in the enterprise, and we don't want people to feel like they have to. But go pursue whatever you're interested in, but just try to be your best at whatever that is. I mean, that's what we want for the next generation.
When it comes to the idea of getting the next generation to go explore a bit, I could imagine that exploration could be quite strategic for their own development. I remember having a conversation with a large family business in Michigan, and one of the conversations they had was the importance of not being a member of the family inside the family business because you're treated differently.
Yeah.
If you were to think about what makes that, again, a great way to develop talent of the next generation, what would be some of the tips you'd offer to families here?
I think it's a great idea. All of us, my sisters, myself, our kids have worked outside the business, and we think that is a great platform to learn and grow. And we actually find that most of the kids want that because they feel like, as I did when you come into working in the family enterprise, people have preconceived notions about what you're going to be like. And you spend a lot of your time just breaking them down. No, I'm not really that kind of guy. I'm, this, but you build your own reputation. So it's kind of nice, fresh to go somewhere else and listen and learn and grow and contribute and develop your own career track. And then potentially bring that back to Kohler, whether you're just sitting in a governance role or whether you're working in the business. It's a huge adder. My daughter now runs part of our wellness business. She runs our yoga business and our cycle studio, and started a new healthy restaurant. And when she was going to graduate school, she started also managing a yoga studio in Chicago, and she learned the practice, became passionate, and she brought that skill back to Kohler, and she'll be a cornerstone of where our wellness organization goes over time.
That's great. That's great. So let's talk a bit more about some of the family dynamic pieces, in particular around succession. So you talked about this unique approach towards the three of you and your sisters coming together and developing a plan. I wonder if you might be able to walk us through what that process looked like, as well as how it makes you think about your own succession downstream differently.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. What was that process like? It was like a construction site. Construction sites are messy, right? I mean, it's first you got to just build fundamentals of, what's your agenda? What's your agenda? What do we really want? I mean, it's a lot of that. So you have to build that foundation of communication, of treating each other with respect, truly listening versus projecting, all of those basic things to really be able to hear each other, understand each other, and form the foundation, and then have rational discussion about interests and what's best for the company. And it takes time. I mean, family relationships are not easy, and it's not a one-time thing. It's an everyday thing. One of the things we're trying to work on, and we realize with the next generation, it's the little things that matter. It's the little things that, remembering birthdays, being positive. It's those little things that can really set relationships askew. So it took a lot of work before we felt confident with, here's a recommendation. So as we think about the future in my succession, it would be incredible if there's a family member that's capable, competent enough, track record of results, all of these things, passion whenever I retire from CEO and ideally step to the position of chairman. But I think just given the ages of where our family members are, it's not a high probability. And that's okay. We definitely, and what my focus is, and our focus is to build the enterprise so strong. As Warren Buffett says, you want to build a company so strong that an idiot can run it, because one day that just might happen. So, that's the objective, is to build such a rock solid organization and people, process, culture. But then, ideally select that leader from within that's coming up through the organization. So we take succession planning very hard. And we always had, one of our early board members, one of the keys to our success has been outside board members like Jim Turley. So since the 70s, we've had outside board members. Today we have 5 outside board members of the pedigree of Jim. And they run our audit committee, they run our HR committee, they provide a lot of very clear, direct feedback. At the end of the day, they know we can control the vote. So, they'll not go to the nth degree, and, but, they absolutely guide us, and they'll be important in our succession process as well as we talk about that. But we spend a lot of time every 2 years. We go deeply through the organization, looking at successors for all key positions, talking about career development. The same thing, public enterprises would do, but with great diligence, because we have to build that talent at my level and at all levels for the future.
So let's imagine that we have a group of people here that is saying, I resonate with the way that you describe this succession.
Yep.
In other words, ideally, or perhaps ideally, it would be someone from the family. But at the same point, I have to make sure they're the right fit in terms of capability and passion and interest. How do you, as a parent or a set of parents, see that objectively?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of my own mother seeing me objectively, my own father seeing me.
They never do.
They never do.
And sometimes they find our faults too readily too, right? No, that's a real issue and challenge. And I think more, it's more complicated when you have more family members in because then you can also have jealousy and different things that, not just at the top level, but at lower levels in the organization. And so the governance of family members in the business is a whole nother story on how we do that. So there's not jealousy of, why is Jimmy promoted and Alice is not, and, and how are we managing their compensation and their movement in the business. But just at my level, I think it is about objectivity, and we all have to make sure that we feel good about that decision on who is the next leader of the enterprise, because it's not about family. That's a positive X factor if it's there, but it's about who's the best leader for the company at this time to achieve the objectives that we have over the next 5 years.
Great. So I'm going to give a few more questions about the strategy of the business, and then shortly we'll turn it over to questions that you might have for Dave as well. So I did a good bit of work back when I was in Michigan with Herman Miller.
Mm-hmm. Great company.
In particular, Herman Miller thinks quite a bit about building this aesthetic and design element. I saw they were on the same list with their Ames chair. And one of the challenges that they have is recruiting design-talented folks to Michigan. And I would imagine the same could be true when you're talking about being on the cutting edge in regards to environment, design, and technology. At certain points, there's a question around talent recruitment and how you build a strategy around that. As you look to this next phase of strategy development for the company when it comes to getting the right talent in there, how do you approach that work?
It's a good question. I will say a couple things. Wisconsin isn't easy to attract everyone, but it's a great place for people that are in the right zone, want a safe, wonderful place to raise a family. So for a set of people, it's idyllic. So we're very strong in doing that. But what we've had to do in certain areas is, and now that we're globalized, we have a very strong design studio in Shanghai. We have a design studio in Delhi. We have a design studio in the UK. We have a design studio in Paris. We have a few designers in New York. So we've opened that up to be able to access the world's best talent. We're also looking from a technology commerce standpoint whether or not we need a center. We have a center in Milwaukee, but we're thinking about, do we need a center in other areas?
St. Louis, for example.
Potentially St. Louis. And we do our electronics development in Shanghai, so we have an engineering tech center in Pune, India. So we're diversified in where we can hire talent, so we're not just solely reliant on the U.S. We have a great engineering center in the U.K. So it's leveraging that diversity of places you can find the talent, and I think every company is thinking about that, because that we're still in the early innings of the next big war, this war on talent. I mean, as the baby boomers come out around the world, come out of industry, that is a deficit of talent and experience that the world has not experienced. We're starting to see it, but you can't replace people with 30 years of experience easily, 20 years of experience easily. It's an issue at all levels, at the factory floor, to the C-suite.
Fantastic. So we're going to turn it over to a few questions that you might have. We have a few mics seated in the back that you can find and ask some questions. Here's the way that I would tee this up. The hope is that this is prompting thoughts about your own organizations. You may be thinking about your relationship with your siblings differently, or thinking about voting shares or succession in different ways. And many of you are living the reality of family business right now. And so as a result, this is an opportunity to bounce some ideas around for us to essentially design as a collective for a bit of time here together. And then obviously we'll be able to do some of this a bit later on, seeing it from a different perspective with our second keynote, as well as our group of panelists later on. So we'll see if there's some questions in the back that we might be able to volley towards Dave.
There's one up here.
So we've got one right there in the front, and then one there in a second.
David, thank you for your comments. Really appreciate your sharing. I wanted to ask about your recapitalization in '98. I'm sure that was one of the biggest challenges the family faced, and like to understand how you approached the process as a family, and also where the family members who are no longer owners today, where that relationship stands, and what you learned from the entire process.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's a really good question. There's actually a Harvard Business Review case study on this for those that are interested. I would say the people that architected this were really my father, his wife, who was our second wife, who was our general counsel at the time, and then our CFO. And then Dorsey and Whitney, I'll give them a plug in Minneapolis. Really good law firm that's helped us on our estate structuring as well as the corporate governance structure over time. But they architected a strategy that was forward thinking in terms of thinking, how would we concentrate the voting shares into a generation skipping trust. So it was really that idea that came later, that they had to put in place a structure that could enable that. And so then the specifics of it were to basically exchange shares for a combination of voting and non-voting shares. And then we would use the non-voting shares to exchange for, we would gift the non-voting shares into the trust and then do an exchange of non-voting for voting to concentrate all the voting in the trust. So that's kind of where the end game was. But to do that, and also to deal with the fact that there were a set of family members that really didn't want to be owners anymore, and they were starting to develop this secondary public market for the shares that was more of a nuisance than anything, because the company was never going to transact. The dividend payout was remaining where it was, so they were really speculating on some future event. So it was designed to kind of cure all of that and set us up for the future, and it really did. But once the recapitalization was done, it was then challenged in court. And the key issue that was challenged was valuation. Because the valuation that was set was much lower than what other advisors would say on a market basis was a true valuation. So it went to court. It was not settled before. It went to court and eventually settled. So it was all about discussions around long-term continuity. It was around control premium and a discount for lack of control, which these shareholders didn't have control to influence. So in the end, I would say that we were very successful in arguing the case and arguing the case that there should be a significant discount in the shares for a minority position. The final chapter is, relationships are still good with those cousins that cashed out. Some of them held smaller positions that and also because of deaths in their family, have gotten a few more. We recently had a situation where that segment of the family wanted to redeem their shares, and want us to buy them out, and we did, and we agreed pretty quickly using a similar appraisal formula. That's actually it's a discount to book, and we purchased their shares back just recently. So, knock on wood, things are okay. But as we all know, anybody can lawyer up at any time and attack the company. So goes back to rule number one, family relationships, and then creating ways for family members to exit amicably that want to exit.
There's no better teacher of this case than Spencer Burke. So if you're looking for your opportunity to hear more, other than maybe David.
No, I can't. I'm yielding to Spencer.
Let's see. Other questions?
I like the finance question because I have an equally, obviously 90% of your strength is people, innovation, unbelievably great design, et cetera. But you have to have finance. And businesses also have to have quality and cost control, best cost. What is Kohler done in the area of quality and best cost processes?
Good question. It's an endless journey. We want to build the most capable supply chain, the best supply chain vis-a-vis our competitors anywhere in the world from a quality, consistency of delivery and cost position. And it's a dynamic environment because channels shift and situations shift, so you continue to have to adapt your strategy. We're adapting our supply chain strategy here in the U.S. Right now because of the growth of e-commerce and going more direct in the most efficient way, things like that. So really, the emphasis on manufacturing and cost and supply chain has been, all around people. It's all around process and driving consistency of best practice. So we have the Kohler operating system, which is similar to the Toyota production system and other elements we've created and adapted our own that we drive consistently in our facilities. And then we've also driven a supply chain model, a geographic manufacturing model that is pertinent to each of the markets in the world. So in China, we have 14 plants. What we make in China is largely for China. In India, we manufacture in India for India. And then in the US, we manufacture in the United States and then also in Mexico, primarily for North America. We'll do some import from China, some import from Thailand for North America, but largely. So we're creating these regional supply chain strategies for each one of the major markets. And that gives us the best cost and service position.
Probably got time for about 2 or 3 more questions and about 17 hands, so that's a good problem to have.
Hi.
Let's see what else might come up.
So, David, I'd like to crack into more of the human aspect of the business.
Where's the question coming
I'm here.
from?
Sorry.
Okay,
I'll
sorry.
stand up.
Yeah.
You talked a lot about the importance of relationships within the family
Yep.
and building trust and getting alignment. And you talked about the process that you went through with your sisters. I'm wondering if there are any mistakes or any cautionary tales that you can, or any wisdom that you can share with this group.
Wow.
If you're willing.
Yeah, no, yeah. That's a good question. Cautionary tales. I think one cautionary tale is, to me is, you can't force these things, and particularly when you try to put this timeline in place. Well, we're going to do this by this time, and then we're going to get the next generation. We're going to do, you can't do that. Because, to really work through and deal with the issues, you have to confront those issues. In any relationship, there are the issues that don't get put on the table that if you really want to have a fulsome relationship, you got to put those hard issues on the table. And they're going to upset other people or the other person. I had a situation where I had a belief about one of my siblings relative to intent that was very rational and logical to me. But I put that on the table and it was highly offensive to the other person. How could you believe that? Or, but unless we deal with those things and put them on the table, and because once she said, no, that's not true, I said, okay, I'm good with that. But there was more damage done by me asking the question than, but we get through that and move on. So I think the lesson learned is that, you have to take the time to be together, have the real conversations, not gloss over it as superficial level, because you could have family meetings and sibling meetings and all these things, but if you're not going deep and facilitated to go deep, you're not dealing with the issue that's going to blow up eventually.
It's a nice distinction, though, in the sense that you can't force it, but you have to set up the appropriate supporting structures for process.
And be intentional.
And those things are hard to balance.
100%, yeah.
Again, maybe one or two more questions for our time together.
Hi, David. Thank you very much for coming. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm concerned, or I'm not concerned, I'm amazed at your year-over-year growth. That's just phenomenal. And so I'm curious
It's
to know...
never high enough.
Yeah.
Jim's right over there. And we're sitting here in the Chuck Knight building down there.
Yeah, well,
I walked in the door, I said, we better all grow if we're in here.
There is that, yeah. I'm curious to know if you could share any best practices for how your team sets their strategic growth agenda and then how you fund that, given that you have no debt.
Yeah, really good question. So we're actually, I would say, just let me start with capital allocation first. I mean, we're pretty disciplined about capital allocation broadly in terms of, everything that we're going to apply capital to has to have a pretty strict financial analysis in terms of the return on investment. And so that's a part of the strong financial discipline that we have as a company. And what's made us successful is that financial discipline on one side, but it's helping to bridle and harness the entrepreneurial spirit and inventiveness on the other side. So it's that combination that's the secret sauce of better economics. So then on the growth side, all of our businesses understand clearly that growth, market share gain, leadership is in their categories. Every category we compete is what we're about. The core to that is driving innovation and driving that vitality index of new products and new services. So that's the engine for growth within. And then on top of that, we're driving unique branding, go-to-market strategies, other channel strategies to enable that. So that's always the first and foremost topic that we talk about relative to strategy, is how do we gain position in the market. So I think that's kind of brought into the culture. I would say also on capital allocation to fund that, we're very disciplined about each of the individual investments. From a portfolio standpoint, across our portfolio, we will not harm, even there's some lower returning businesses in our portfolio. We will still, though, support the right investments in that business to compete versus starving them for capital. Because as soon as you do that, you're making a choice not to be in that business.
So we're going to finish with one more question. The toughest part of my job is cutting off the great questions and great content, but I promise you, you're going to have great content throughout the rest of the morning. So we'll see if there's one more out there, and then we'll again thank Dave for his time. Please. Oh, wait, we'll see. Yeah. It's a battle.
There's our distributor over there, Mike, who's going to ask. Our engine distributor, maybe we can go two questions. Let's do one here.
We'll do rapid fire. Yeah, rapid fire.
Yes.
David, you mentioned that probably the next CEO may not be a family member.
Yep.
So if you were right now looking at the constituencies that would be involved with looking for the CEO, whether it's family or board members or senior management, who would be on that team?
It's the board. Fundamentally, it's the board. It's our outside directors. It's myself, my two siblings, my father, who's executive chairman. It's that group that will be the decision-making body on who is qualified and right to be the next CEO. Yeah.
Great. And then one final comment.
How about Mike there?
David, there are way too many questions I could ask, and it's not fair, so I won't bring those up. I'm going to ask you a real light question.
Yeah.
Just to finish this off. Tell us what it's like being on the board of the Green Bay Packers.
It's yeah, that's a great question. So, it's like being in my position at Kohler. It's an incredible honor. How many sports franchises could real mortals like us, be a part of? So it's an amazing tradition, though. If you think about that team, excluding the San Francisco game, but if you think about that organization and the history and the traditional values that they stand for, I mean, it's rich in integrity, honor, tradition, and then there, philosophies of almost to a fault building talent from within, as the organization has focused on in the past. So it's a great thing to be involved with, and that window into the sports world. And it's amazing, how the NFL, really above all other sports right now, is just continuing to grow like mad in terms of viewership here in the United States. So.
Well, you'll notice that the one question I did not prep as a Chicago Bears fan was that question. But it's been a real pleasure to
Thank you so
welcome
much,
you here,
Peter.
and let's all thank David for his time.
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
Really appreciate it. Thanks.